Okay, everyone, I think we will start. Uh, Thank you all for Zooming in today, and I want to welcome you to our town hall meeting. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Beth Noel. I'm the Director of Marketing, and I, along with Alexandra from the President's Office, are going to be your hosts today. And the focus of the meeting is to, sorry, truck. The focus of the meeting is to share with you the college's phasing approach as we head into summer and prepare for fall. Before we begin, I just want to go over the process for participation. And in order for us to make sure everyone can hear clearly and there's no audio feedback, everyone has been muted upon entry into today's meeting. Please note we are recording video and audio from this session. If you want to, you can choose to mute your device's camera by clicking the video camera icon at the bottom of the Zoom screen. After emergency management's brief presentation, there's going to be some question and answer session, and you can submit any questions you have via the chat bubble at the bottom of your Zoom screen. We are going to respond to as many questions as possible, but we are going to have a log of all questions automatically generated, and any questions that we are unable to answer about the operations, returning to operations this fall, if we can't answer them, we will follow up with you individually via email or include answers in an upcoming college-wide email update. Before we start, I want to turn the meeting over to President Mabry. He would like to say a few words before we begin.
There we go. So, has everybody noticed it's summer out there? So there's no place you can go, but you should get outside, really, and try to enjoy the weather. It's going to be a great weekend. Looks like some nice days. I want to thank everybody for coming today, and I'm going to have to hop out in a few minutes, but I'm sure this is going to be an informative session today. So just to give you a general overview, as I think you've seen from a number of communications, that we are really going to be working, teaching and learning for the most part remotely through the end of 2020. I mean, we know that we're going to have the overwhelming majority, probably 90 or more percent of our classes online in the fall, and that we're going to have limited people on campus. So that's the whole context of what we're dealing with is when we talk about reopening. So you'll see that the reopening committee and the EMT team has spent a lot of time carefully putting together a really comprehensive plan that is the reopening we will be doing will be to support our academic and student support goals that we have at the college, and also to complete the critical tasks we have to get done, on a day-to-day or week-to-week basis at the college. First and foremost, though, we'll make sure that we meet the state guidelines to ensure safety, and we want to make sure that we meet those guidelines so it is safe for our faculty, staff, administrators, and any students coming on campus. So, and you'll see more about how we're meeting those state guidelines as you go forward. So we've worked closely with managers across the college to ensure that each unique area, and the areas are all unique across the college, and where we're going to bring back employees, that we meet the state standards there. So that's our guideline, is to make sure wherever we're going to bring somebody back, we're going to be able to meet the state standards there. We will have a very limited number of people on our campuses through the end of 2020. We will be bringing back staff back really in specific areas to support certain activities and certain things we can't do as well off campus. But mostly it's about supporting our academic programs and the ongoing operations of the college. But again, it's going to be a limited number of people. There will probably be limited hours in amounts of time that people will be spending on campus. We will do this carefully and thoughtfully and in a step-by-step basis. Wherever we've done a little bit of this so far, we learn things each time, and we'll learn by doing it step by step so that we keep people safe and we get this done. I've talked repeatedly to the managers at the college, though, and cabinet about really working with all of you to make sure you have what you need and are able to work effectively and efficiently from home, or wherever you're doing your remote work from. That's, the world we're going to be in for a while. See, my background, I'm at my house right now. I'm usually on campus, maybe once a week or so. But, I'm lucky I have a pretty defined space here where I can work. I'm sure most of you have been on plenty of Zoom calls where you've met family members, children, pets. That's been some of the fun part of our Zoom calls. And, but it is a challenging environment for folks. We recognize that. And, but this is going to be our reality for a while. We're going to try and work carefully with all of you. If we need to ask, parts of our teams to come back on campus, we want that to be a dialogue about how we can do this with people so that it works for everybody. Again, we understand there are children at home. Some people take care of parents. There are ways to work through HR to deal with all of these issues too. So again, we're going to be going through a phased, limited, and safe approach to bringing anybody back on campus. So what I want to dispel right away is there's never going to be a time you're going to get an email. It says everybody's coming back tomorrow. That's just not what's going on. Very limited numbers, working directly with managers who work closely with their teams to talk about how we can do this to serve our students and to meet our mission. So Patrick and his team will really provide a lot more details and answer questions. I'm sure there'll be many of those, but again, they've walked through an awful lot of this. There's been a lot of time spent getting ready to be able to do this in a safe way. Okay, so I'll turn it over to you, Patrick.
All righty. Thanks for unmuting there, Beth. We've got a series of slides we want to get through that will hopefully address some of the questions that you may have had coming into today's town meeting, but also kind of give you an overview on what's been happening almost daily behind the scenes with a number of people who are on this call. And I see we're several screens deep, so you scroll through, you'll see a good number of the people that have made up our emergency management team. Beth, if you could kick it over to the next slide, Alexandra, will kind of give people an idea on who it is that's been working on this. So our emergency management team is actually more than a decade old. It originated back when we received a federal grant back in 2009. We were one of the only community colleges in the country to have gotten it from the Department of Education, and we used it to create this team that was going to be in place to handle any types of events on campus that were out of the ordinary. And at the time, actually, at the time we did it, believe it or not, it was the bird flu back in 2009, which seems like ancient history now. But we kept the shell of that team in place using the federal model of incident command. And we went through the National Incident Management System and a lot of the different modules that FEMA had offered with incident command to kind of set up our leadership team in place to handle events. And so the crew that you're seeing on the left-hand side has been in place for more than a decade, with some changing members depending on roles at the college. But we tried to encapsulate the majority of the large areas that would be represented in the event of any type of emergency on campus. So when we've had hurricanes, when we've dealt with power outages, when we've dealt with even, on the smaller scale, the elevators going out or fire alarms, the folks on the left have always been working behind the scenes and meeting to debrief after the events and find out what we did right, what we did wrong. And we're constantly using those incidents to help tweak our policies and procedures on these events. But back in March, when we started seeing the first signs of what was going to be coming towards us with COVID-19, the group began meeting and realized because of the scope of what we were seeing on the forecast that we were going to need a lot more hands on deck. And so if you look at the whole right side there, those are folks, for better or worse, that whether or not they liked it or loved it, they got drafted into service over the course of the last 4 months to join us on the emergency management team. We were able to meet a couple of times before we actually left campus in some different types of settings, but obviously it's a very large group. And once we got to March 13th, realized we were going to have to, everything was going to be going remotely. So the emergency management team has been meeting weekly now, every week since March, with just about everybody you see on that list, plus some occasional guest stars joining us to help us triage certain issues. But that combination of folks has been dealing with everything to do with our COVID-19 plans, working in conjunction with the state of Massachusetts since March 11th. It was really when we started things in motion. As a result of that, we've ended up creating a number of different subsets, because once we get past the first few weeks of crisis management with trying to get everything into a remote setting, we then had to take a look at wrapping things up successfully for the semester. And that included the very positive and successful virtual commencement we did, but making sure that we were able to get a lot of the clinicals and the health profession classes finished up safely with everybody. So in parallel track with what's happening with the governor's office, I know many of you have heard of these. The language is offered everywhere. You've heard about the phasing that Governor Baker has put into place for his 4-phase phasing plan for the state of Massachusetts. And a couple of months back, we created and began mirroring that phasing plan for what things would happen, how things would happen here on campus. We had the dates were a little bit staggered against the governor's calendar, but we moved into phase 1 essentially to close out our spring semester and really to cue things up for what was going to be happening on campus in the month of June. So as you can see from some of the slide that's up here, I mean, it kind of takes you through bullet points of what we were doing, working with the governor's office and the state guidelines. Right when the crisis started back in March, we were required to join a statewide consortium that at the time was meeting virtually every Friday afternoon, and it consisted of a representative from all higher education institutions in the state of Massachusetts. We began meeting regularly with, and folks on that call included MEMA, the Massachusetts Emergency Management Association, the Board of Higher Education, Department of Higher Ed, the Secretary of Education, and the State Department of Public Health. And what it was intended to do was to help answer a lot of the questions that colleges were facing as they were trying to close out their spring semester. And as you can imagine, a good deal of them had to do with residential life and dormitories and trying to get the students off campus safely. But what was really impacting us the most was moving to the remote learning that occurred so successfully over March, April, and May for us. So you'll see there, and there's, we're going to hear from different members of the team, but there had to be a mobilization of a lot of efforts and resources to get these, technology into the hands of not just our students, but some of our staff and faculty who needed this to be able to work remotely. So there's been a series of initiatives that Pam Flaherty and her team initiated through the Dean of Students Office, and Joe Patuto and the folks in IT worked hand in glove to make sure that we were able to safely distribute this equipment over the course of several weeks. And it's been ongoing, and anybody that's had to come to campus has seen how it's been done through our public safety officers in the lobby with some safe social distancing measures in place. You kick it to the next slide, Alexander. And once we got past really what was considered the end of phase 1, which was technically the resolution with our virtual commencement, and then closing out a couple of the clinicals that needed to happen over on Middle Street, we worked pretty closely with the deans and through them, their faculty members, to make sure that we could get the students safely completing their programs over, especially in Talbot and the labs. And to do that, there was a whole set of guidelines that were established, which are now available online, and we're going to be using them moving forward through the course of the summer. And those were handed out to everybody that was coming onto campus, whether they be students, faculty, staff, or vendors that were coming in to complete some of the work. And which should be no surprise to you, a lot of it had to do with the social distancing that you've heard about everywhere, or the requirements of wearing masks. Working with CFO and the folks in procurement, Christina Kelly, and everybody in facilities, we were able to secure a significant amount of PPE, the personal protection equipment, to have in place to make sure that if anybody was coming onto our campus during this period of time, that we had gear that they would be able to use if they needed to access the properties. Not surprisingly, virtually everybody, almost 100% of people showed up already with their own masks, but we have had them available to share with them. But moving into phase 2, we had to create this phasing task force that was going to start triaging a lot of the individual cases and requests that have been coming up and emanating from what we're looking at for a summer schedule. So the president chartered a task force that emanated both from cabinet and the emergency management team. And this group meets every Monday. You see the names up there right now, again, with some other folks weaving in and out. But these are the folks who are getting the individual requests from faculty and or staff that require accommodations for anything for campus access for the months of June, July, and August. And we've been receiving and working very successfully with the folks coming back because it's happened in such a slow trickle with single digits that we're able to use those groups as like a beta group to test some of these policies out. And so that group that you're looking at there, as well as a number of different folks who've pitched in to lend a hand, have spent the last 3 to 4 weeks making sure that we have proper signage and information available on campus for everybody that's going to be returning to us. Because as you'll see on this slide here, these workplace safety standards, these are for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, period. And we were required to do this, this statewide certification. And I got to tell you that if folks have not heard about it, there's a 13 bullet checklist that needed to be checked off. And we had accomplished all of those already weeks ago before the certification was needed. But we were able to get the certifications completed, and those notices are posted on the doorways entering into our, there it is on the left there, into our facilities to show that we're in compliance with the governor's guidelines. But what you're going to see over the course of the next couple of slides, these signs now have been installed everywhere in all of our lobbies, on all our elevator doors, on our common areas. These are the signage to have for anything that's a common area, such as a coffee room, a kitchenette area, a coffee center. And you'll see it talks about what we're going to be able to safely accommodate in the elevators. That we're going to be doing single point access for all of our buildings for the foreseeable future. Meaning you can only go in through one door, but you're allowed to exit through any of the doors on that property. But just in terms of us being able to know who's coming in and out of these buildings, and so the facilities can follow up and do the proper cleanings for spaces that have been utilized. We're doing public safety has been doing a checklist to know which of the areas that have been used. But we're using those guidelines from the Commonwealth to also execute our own plan internally. So all of the teams from both Bedford and Lowell facilities, working with Dan Martin in public safety and then Colleen Cox, have been spent the last several weeks going through each and every room on our campuses to come up with occupancy numbers, and to take a look at what is going to be allowed in certain spaces, what even the classrooms and what they could safely accommodate, if the social distancing protocols are still going to be in place for the fall. So there has literally been a building to building, room to room inventory that's been done on all of these properties. And so what we're looking at here, which again, if we're working off the governor's schedule, potentially, if all proceeds as well as it's been doing right now, there's a potential that the state of Massachusetts could move into phase 3 on June 29th, with the numbers, if they continue to trend downward, and with the testing still in place. And ultimately, again, if everything stayed on that calendar, phase 4 could commence on July 20th. But what we're in right now, heading towards the phase 3 highlights, is what everybody's been preparing for now. And the folks from facilities that have been introducing a lot of these cleaning supplies into the common areas. Judy Burke, Lauren Ellis, Sheila Moore, and they moved our summer camps into a whole virtual program for the months of July and August. And you're going to be hearing from some of the managers in specific areas about trying to come up with some plans that would allow folks to return to campus over the course of July and August. Again, in very, very limited numbers, and all of them anybody that comes to campus still has to adhere to the COVID-19 guidelines that are in place. So there's conversations that have already started about managers working to figure out some staggered shifts, maybe to have some personnel on one campus versus another. But before that could happen, we needed to make sure that we've evaluated each of these spots, and we have the phasing committee has worked with a group to install these plexiglass shields across campus in a number of areas. There's only one chunk of the college that we still need to get these shields installed as. But those shields are in place now in about 80% of the campus for any area that would have a face-to-face interaction with other individuals. They're not going to be in place for the private offices where people can shut their doors and be able to maintain the social distancing that way. But we wanted to make sure that those are in place, working to help anybody that was going to be in a common area. So Donna Mattori and the folks from the library have been tremendous with helping us get those shields installed and some protocols in place for what she is beginning to deal with some summer students needing access to resources. So you're going to see some announcements about limited hours that's available. But again, she and her team are going to be following all the guidelines that have been established because they're reaching out ahead of time, and we're trying to help work those through. So you can see the important dates down there, which is what we're using as our goalposts to get a lot of these initiatives in place. With next week, June 23rd, we have a couple of programs that are starting to return on Middle Street. And then July 7th is when the summer schedule is, again, mostly predominantly online, but it's being done remotely. We are going to have a few people starting to return. So I do want to throw it out to a couple of other members of the team here. So if I could, Colleen, I'm not sure where you went on my screen here, but if we could unmute Colleen, Colleen can talk about a survey that she's been leading with and working with Kate and Kathy on to talk to personnel who've been accessing campus. Colleen?
Sure. Thanks, Pat. The phasing committee has worked with IR over a number of weeks to develop a survey to survey all faculty, staff, and students who have come onto campus for whatever reason, whether they've come on to go to their office, pick up some materials, or are taking or teaching a class. We have a list of those individuals from the sign-in sheets that everyone is familiar with if you have come on campus. We've asked everyone to sign in and sign out, so we're very aware of what spaces people are in. If you received this survey, and the first group of them just went out recently, if you received this survey, please take a couple minutes, it's not long, to fill it out. It's going to ask you about your comfort level being on campus, coming back onto campus, any concerns you have, how you feel about the directions, moving about the building, the entrances, the restrooms, etc. Communications of our safety procedures and protocols, and any suggestions you have for improvement, which is perhaps the most important thing. This feedback will be critical to us to improve what we have put into place as we move forward into phase 3, into the summer and throughout the summer and into the fall. So if you have been on campus, you will be receiving it. Some people might already have it in their inbox. Just take a couple minutes. It's very brief. All the data will go directly to IR. They'll compile it for the phasing committee, and we'll take a look at it and see what we need to do to improve what we already have in place.
Thank you, Colleen.
Thanks.
I was going to toss it to Dan Martin. If we could unmute Dan, kind of give us an update on what's happened. Public safety has been on campus throughout this whole COVID-19 3 months here, but I know there's, from what I've heard, at least anecdotally, folks that have been showing up have been already prepared and in full compliance with what's being required, but seems to be well received when we have had people come in.
Yeah, sure. So, anyone that has been coming on campus, they've been arriving with PPE. They've been, signing in. Most of them been using their own pen. They've been very good at, what we're asking them to do. Because obviously our goal is to keep everyone safe. And public safety has been working close with, both IT and the Dean of Students area on getting Chromebooks out to students, laptops, hotspots, and we've also been, helping out students in the food pantry. So that being said, we've also been using some of the shuttle drivers to make these home deliveries for students that were not able to come to campus safely. So we've been doing that as well.
All right. Thank you. Thanks, Dan. Can I toss it? Ryan, where'd you go here? On the facilities, there you go. Facility side, I know the guys have been here also nonstop throughout this crisis, dealing with the targeted cleanings. Can you just let folks know what's going to be happening in terms of what they can expect with the ongoing cleanings?
Rick, are you on this call? Because Rick is in charge of the services, but I can kind of give you a high level what we're doing. We're going through. We get a daily list from public safety of who's been on campus, the areas that they've come in. So we have the cleaners go back behind folks after they leave, and we wipe down the areas of where they've been throughout the campus. We've gone through all the classrooms to figure out what our capacity would be at 25%. That's kind of the guidelines that we're using right now. And we're working with area managers or bringing people back in a slow level. We're going through their work areas, trying to figure out what they need for barriers, what kind of furniture we can move around to make it so that they're safe when they come back. And we have Irene working with Beth, making a bunch of signs we're putting out everywhere. And it's a lot better than what it was even last week. So I feel very safe how we're operating with this pandemic going on right now. So, and if Rick, if you're on the call, if you want to add anything.
Sure, I just add that, again, we're getting informed by Security Daily what office people are going to. We're disinfecting the high-touch surfaces in those areas. So it's very important for us to get specific information about where people have been. We have staff on campus from very early in the morning until the end of the night. And we're doing our best to keep up with this. We have the right equipment and disinfectants to keep the community safe. And I think our staff are pretty experienced and they're rising to the challenge.
Thank you, Rick. I wanted to, my screen keeps moving here, but Mary Emmerich from HR is on the call here. She was on the screen because she and her team have been working very close to make sure that everything we're doing is in adherence with, making sure that all of our employees, or actually anybody that steps foot on our campuses, remains safe through this. So, Mary, I'm sorry I can't find you on the screen here, but I know you're here.
Yep. Good afternoon, everyone. I just wanted to share some resources that are available if you go to the My MCC page. It's been our kind of keeper of information for employees related to the MCC pandemic response guidelines. But most importantly, it's really trying to assure that you have any questions that you may have, definitely reach out to HR, especially if you're caring for family or need, timed, leave policies are here. So anything that's just related to what this pandemic and really change to remote working has impacted everybody. So it's been, the pandemic has led to a lot of anxiety and concern, and we just want to make sure that we're here to support everyone and each other through this process as we have adjusted over the course of the weeks to months now, and looking forward to the future. So I know the HR team has done a lot of work in providing information from protocol and procedure. We sent out some training that's COVID related, but really basic procedures and training about social distancing, how to prevent and stop the spread of germs, covering your face appropriately, and maintaining that 6 foot of social distancing. So just want to refer you to the website for additional information, our LifeWorks Employee Assistance Plan, as needed as you face and deal with all of life's challenges and work challenges that we're going through. But definitely appreciate the support, patience, and as we move forward, working with your managers and supervisors in identifying remote work that's available, or helping you work on campus safely. That's really the most important piece and commitment that the college has, is to ensure everybody's health and well-being. So definitely reach out to the team if you have any personal or individual concerns, and we're here to support everybody throughout and moving forward.
Thank you, Mary. There is also on our webpage now, we were required as part of the governor's compliance with COVID-19 statewide to create our own control plan, is what they're called statewide, and it's on our webpage, but I'll be sure to circulate a version of it electronically. It's a 21-page report of where how things progressed over the spring and how we entered into the summer sessions here. But this is a conversation that's going to continue throughout the course of the summer. It's not like we've let our foot off the gas on anything on this, because there's so much that is constantly changing. So we've been trying our best to share the updates with you in college-wide emails as often as possible when there is something to report. But what we also set out to do at the outset here was to make sure that our unions had a seat at the table to join us in this conversation for the planning that was taking place over the period of several months. And so she may have regretted it, but Joanna Delmonico, I don't know where you went on the screen here, she joined us right in one of the first meetings and has been a regular attendee, and is actually the one who had asked for this type of a town hall to kind of gather everybody in one place. So Joanna, you moved off my screen here. I don't know if you, there you go. If we could jump in.
Yes, I did it. No, there was just so much information and so many parts, so many moving parts. I felt pretty secure that the way we were moving forward was good, but it was really hard for me to articulate things I know, for my members. And I don't think we looked at this as a union issue, but a human issue. And so I think the team has been really good in responding in that way. And I think we just got to a point where there's a lot of conversations statewide with MCCC statewide. Our college is in a very different place than some of our sister institutions. I will say we are leaps and bounds ahead of them as far as planning and decision-making of, for instance, the faculty, it was decided would create online development, online materials, just in case. And because we don't want to get caught, out in the cold again and not be prepared. And we did that as hopefully to really focus on student retention. They know what they're in for. We'll get them in, we'll get them through, we'll have quality materials for them. So all of this sort of hinged on, the planning and what would happen on campus. And again, I didn't feel really confident to sort of reiterate all of this to everybody. And I thought this would be a way for everyone to come together, not just me to my members, or I know Bruce is on here and I know Sandra's on here somewhere, but to their units, I said, it's easier if we all come together as a group and just ask questions and figure out what's going on. And it should be just a comfortable setting to even if you have a small question, just ask it, I think I would encourage you to do that.
That's a perfect segue then, Joanna. I'd like to queue it up here for this last chunk of the time we've got here to answer individual questions. I'm not sure how Beth and Alexandra have been seeing them coming through, but we want to make sure we can get to anybody that's got individual questions, with the caveat that on June 18th here, we're going to tell you what we know at this point, with an understanding that, like, literally we are watching those daily press briefings, if you will, with the governor, just as keenly as many of you, to see if there's anything in there that directly impacts us. You should know that there's a higher education task force that was chartered as part of the governor's reopening plan that has been meeting with some regularity. It includes a couple of the community college presidents at the table for that conversation. So we do, the president, through the President's Council, get some feedback on that particular grouping. But we wanted to just open this up now for the last segment here to see if we can get any individual questions asked. So Beth or Alexandra, if I could throw it to you. I'm not sure if you're getting them. I haven't been keeping up lifetime on the chat.
So they're coming in very slowly. So if anyone has questions, please feel free to ask. Tom Laughlin has just asked one. Can faculty have some optional smaller gatherings outside on the campus grounds with students, perhaps groups of 8 with a faculty member once or twice to meet and connect? Lack of connection when meeting only virtually.
So Tom, I can address part of that, and then if anybody else from the EMT wants to jump in. What we're trying to do is restrict building usage in the insides of our properties right now. We've got the good weather on our side that would lend itself towards something that's done externally, but invariably folks are going to potentially want to use the restrooms or come into the properties, and that's where we're just trying to maintain some control so that it's not just people roaming, so that we're able to keep track of where people have been. So what I would suggest is, and if Colleen, if you're the appropriate person, to have Tom email you with the potential times he's looking to do that. Because what we've been finding and dealing with very successfully is the requests that have been coming from individual faculty who have needed access. We've granted it at every turn, but we want to make sure that they front-loaded their students and or anybody coming to campus with the protocols and information they need. So Colleen,
Yep.
Can you jump in there?
Definitely. Tom, please do that.
Okay, Tom, send an email to Colleen, because she's maintaining this summer schedule for us for any and all happenings on campus, whether they be indoors or outside, or if they are, in some cases, vendors or external partners who've been looking to access their properties. We want to make sure we've got it all on the master list. Beth?
They're arriving on your phone right now, Pat.
Yikes. Okay. Boom, bada, boom. So will students be able to access the library buildings in August and September? The answer to that is yes. I don't know if, Donna Maturi, are you on here? Donna has a plan that she brought to the group on Monday that was going to be able to reintroduce limited hours. And that schedule is going to be published. She was working on the document to publish it within the last 48 hours or so. that's going to basically detail when those libraries would be accessible and available to students. Again, as you're going to hear every single time we talk about this, safety protocols in place with the social distancing, with the masks, and the areas of where the plexi shields are is where the interaction would be happening. But okay, I don't see. Yeah, Donna Matori will be issuing again some guidelines on that with the summer hours pretty imminently. All right, what do we got here? Okay, the question from Donna Colella about students in classes and will drivers still be needed? The drivers have been used for over 3 months now for a series of different events. They've, as Dan mentioned, working with Pam Flaherty and her team, they've been doing home deliveries of technology. They've been doing, in some cases, home delivery for some food pantry donations for individuals who couldn't make it to campus. They've been using them as much as possible to provide the technology and the services to the students. So there's clearly not going to be the need to have the full campus shuttle schedule in place, but we are looking to maintain some, again, just like the library is looking at, some limited hours where we'd be able to provide those delivery services through the drivers. What else we got there, Beth?
There's a question about what is the protocol for people who do not wear a mask on campus? If there are exceptions, what are those exceptions and on what bases? And then what is considered an effective face covering?
Okay, well, at this point, this isn't like a Middlesex edict. We're following the governor's guidelines in terms of the masks and/or face coverings. And as you've seen, those, in enclosed areas in the office spaces, those masks right now are still required, just like they are in a business or a supermarket you may go into. We are, I'm in my office today, but I'm the only person on the top floors here. So I'm singing away to my Pandora music and nobody cares, but I've got a closed door, and so I don't have my mask on right now. But if I stepped out into the hallway or a common area, yes, I do. And I can tell you what we did a quick pass through with folks that have been coming to campus in the last few days specifically, and everybody shows up with their masks on. But because of the work we did with facilities and procurement, we have an abundance of those masks to have those in place. But that question about the enforcement of how that's going to be happening, what we've seen is full compliance at this point. Nobody has resisted. Nobody has balked at those mandates, because that's what's in place for us to allow anybody back onto the campus right now.
Patrick,
Yep.
I'm assuming the
Go ahead,
question. I'm assuming the question may have been asked based on a disability. If a student with a disability has a requirement where they may have some kind of a medical issue or something where they can't wear the mask, that might be where the question's coming from. And if that's the case, then we would evaluate it the way that we'd evaluate any accommodation, and we would base the need for the student to be on campus, what the requirement is, who the people are in the class, is there another way to do something? So we would definitely have to do individual evaluations of any faculty member, staff, or student who would need any type of a disability medical accommodation.
Thank you, Pam. Yep, Pam, Rebecca, and her team have been working hand in glove with all of this to make sure that the students' rights are going to be represented in any of the conversations we're having here. So if people do have suggestions, I'd ask, especially on the student side, to directly send those to the Dean of Students, so we can make sure that we've got them factored into whatever the plans are. I see there's a question about, I'd like to have my exams in a computer classroom. Will that be possible? So again, I'm going to go back and default, Colleen, make sure that any requests that are going to be needed for access, that is sent to Colleen so she can get it onto our master list. Colleen?
Yes, and the classrooms, the computer classrooms in particular that we've looked at, you may think they could have 20 computers in there, but in fact, with social distancing, it may have a max of 8. So we have a master list of that. So we would need all the information when you would like to come in, how many students, and, we'll work with you on that.
Yeah, I see Joanna's comment too. I agree, Joanna. The deans have been the ones that Colleen's been working the closest with. They've had the master list of all of their programs, so that's usually the best route to go. What I said before was what Tom was asking about, something that was outdoors. It didn't look like it was a scheduled classroom primarily for it, but any of these requests should be going through the respective routes of communication within the academic side.
And just if I could add to that, Patrick, I think we have to see what things look like in the fall too, because it may be difficult to require student participation during particular times, because you just don't know what people's situations are. I really tossed back and forth with my dean about whether I wanted to have times on my class or not. My concern was that people may be otherwise encumbered by situations that beyond their control. And, what if they originally signed up, but now they have kids at home, so they can't do the class at that time. So I opted to go without times on my class. So just something to think about for events or faculty events or small group events. If it's not pre-planned with times, it might be difficult to get people on campus depending what their individual situations are.
Just back scrolling through a question. I see a question from Tara regarding our guidelines versus Lowell High School. I can only speak to what we have in place for our properties, Tara. So what the guidelines are that are on our website and that can be shared, with anybody coming onto our campus, reflects the Middlesex Community College properties only. You probably should check in with the high school if you're, and if you're going to the high school, check to see what their guidelines are. But if anybody's coming onto our campus, including those high school students, they have to adhere to the guidelines we have in place for Middlesex.
Yeah, Patrick, we've got quite a few staff that go back and forth between the schools, and I would agree with what you recommended, that if say Lowell High says, no, you don't need to wear a mask, then you don't wear a mask over at Lowell High, but you have to wear one over here. So just being prepared if you're going back and forth in the middle of the day, that you're abiding by both and complying with both areas. Even though you're a Middlesex employee and you're over there, you have to abide by theirs. Vis-a-vis the opposite, if you're a Lowell employee but you come on our campus, same thing.
Okay. I'm trying to see if I've got everything covered here. I did see one from Donna Colella. Donna, that's not the question you're asking is not something that the emergency management team would be queued up to answer. So that's probably a question for a different gathering or a different venue. But we're just trying to deal with the questions that people had about potentially returning to their workspaces in the coming weeks. So I don't have your answer for you, but I would suggest it be directed somewhere else. You might be able to get better resolution on that. Are there any other questions that I'm sorry, Beth and Alexandra, that I'm missing here on the phone or the group chat? I want to make sure that we are answering any concerns or comments from people that want to contribute here.
Nothing new has come in the last minute or so, but we do have this Zoom open for another 9 minutes. So please, if there's something that you really want the answer to or you think might be good to clarify, please don't hesitate to ask.
Nice birds
Patrick,
in the background there.
That's my house. Because I guess I want to clarify is because I just got a couple texts from some staff that just came up, maybe to clarify Donna's question, because the question is coming from people are concerned if they're coming back on campus or not coming back on campus. Is at least what I'm hearing from the folks that are texting me, and they want to know if they're going to be notified. And if they're going to be notified, will they be able to come on campus and get their belongings? And what will they need to do that? At least that's what I'm getting. I don't know if that's clarifying Donna's question, but I'm just getting that from some folks on my phone.
Well, I think I would toss it to Mary on the HR side, but I can tell you in terms of building access, we're certainly going to allow anybody that comes to campus to access the properties in the same manner that people have been doing now for several weeks, and that's just checking in with public safety and letting us know the rooms that people are going to. So, Mary, do you want to deal with it on the HR end of things?
Yeah, I think that those are the appropriate protocol that we would have to follow, as similarly done right now, as we've had employees access their office or have to grab equipment or documents, mail, and it's just notifying security, but also letting your supervisor know, kind of your work schedule, kind of maintaining that communication. So really kind of following the procedures that have been outlined from a standpoint just to ensure your safety on the campus, and also security, knowing and coordinating with facilities, really the targeted cleaning necessary to just ensure the hygienic workspaces.
Okay. Nancy, I saw a question just posed if you need to come to your office to pick up files. Yes, you're going to have to contact public safety. There are notices taped at every door for our properties because the properties are locked and not open to the public right now. They're open to MCC personnel only, but you just have to call public safety upon arrival. They'll come and meet you at the door, let you in, and again, just check. You just have to tell them what the office number is that you're going to be going to, so they can circle back around the facilities to let them know where people have been. All right. Beth and Alexandra, I think I've cleared the queue of what I've had on the phone. Anybody else from emergency management team want to weigh in with some parting comments? Raise your hand. All right. Okay, well, hopefully we got everybody's questions answered as best we could right now at this point. We want you all to continue to stay safe. We have been, again, just to cue this up, we'll probably do another one of these before we get to the September schedule of events, when we really start moving into what's being called the new normal. So, all I can say is, as best you can, try to continue to read the updates that we're shipping out from the emergency management mailbox, because that's the clearinghouse where we're trying to get this information disseminated from. We've tried to reduce the frequency of those and to crush them down into smaller messages, especially over the course of the summer. But any pertinent data will be shared through that email box. And once we are moving into the next phase here, heading into July, I'm certain there's going to be a lot more changes and updates so that we can get things queued up for whatever version of life we're going to be looking at come September. So thank you, everybody, for your communications. They've been very effective because we take every email that's sent in and send it to the appropriate manager to help us triage and answer. So please continue to do those. And
just one thing, Pat, just a reminder that this session was recorded. And so as soon as the video has been processed and it's ready, a link will be sent out using Newscaster for anyone who missed it.
Yep. Thank you all for joining us here at Town Hall Central on June 18th. I'm sure many of you got to get onto your next Zoom meeting because everybody's got them lined up in the queue. So thanks for being here for this. Again, continue sending the questions. If you got anything further you want answered on a one-on-one basis, we'll make sure we get the loops closed for you. Thanks, everybody.